The company that I co-own was started in 2015, and it was started around our passion to bring foresight and futures thinking to a wider audience, because we think it's really important for people to understand a number of things about the future, one of which is that we don't know how it's going to pan out. So as much as all our organizations want to create schedules and projections and systems that give us a false sense of security about the future, the one thing we know is we don't know. We only know what's happened. We don't really know what's happening right now. And we certainly don't know for sure what's going to happen tomorrow and 10, 15 years' time. So we brought a book to market by engaging 60 people around the world to create a perspective on the future of business, loads and loads of different perspectives. And that led us to do a number of things. So within our business, not only do we publish books, we speak about the future, we consult with big organizations all around the world about the future, and we look at executive education and how thinking about foresight can really start to inform new notions of leadership, because we think leadership needs to be really different in the future. And the thing that's really important to us is thinking about a very human future, because if we look at the default track we're on right now, then that's going to lead us to one that's very technologically dominant. And actually that means the power is in the hands of very few individuals, the very few individuals right at the top of the big technology organizations. So we think that technology is not actually a bad thing, it's actually what humans choose to do with it that is potentially bad. And kind of everyone sort of agrees with that. And yet, as a society, we let the default track continue to evolve and continue to develop. So a very human future is about a future where the benefits of technology has been democratized, where the power doesn't reside just within a few, but it's spread around so that we can all access the technology. Because if we believe some of the trends that we're starting to see about the nature of work and jobs, maybe there will only be 50% of the jobs in the future because everything has been automated. Now that's fine and that's great, so long as what we put behind that are the societal systems that help us think about how we live fulfilling lives. So there are a number of things that we think are actually really important, a kind of manifesto almost, that helps us move towards a very human future. And the first is a notion of extraordinary leadership. And extraordinary leadership is actually acknowledging that what is normal nowadays are wicked problems, not tame problems. Wicked problems, and where they're kind of social in nature, where we very often don't fully understand the problem, never mind the solution. And actually we don't have the solution in ourselves. So we have to be prepared to give something away in terms of coming to the solution. And extraordinary leadership is about bringing together a new set of skills, about thinking about the future, about being used to looking at uncertainty, being clear that disruptive exponentiality is actually a reality and it's not something that people say to frighten us, because the world is just changing so radically fast. We also need to realize that if the world automates at the way that it's continuing to do, that commoditizes our products and services, and that paradoxically people and humans become more important because that's what we have left to differentiate what we do. So extraordinary leadership. Critical is digital literacy. That's not about coding, it's about understanding what the technologies are capable of and how we might use them. That's not that we need to understand the detail behind those technologies, but that we need to know how to ask the right questions. So digital literacy. Then we need to think about how do we evaluate some of these things that are changing so fast. The bigger our organizations are, the worse we are at evaluating things quickly. And then what we find is startups and other entrepreneurs coming and steal our markets from us. So our big organizations, and we have to remember that all entrepreneurs and startups, if they're successful, become these big organizations. So how do we evaluate some of the opportunities that these technologies represent? How do we evaluate our part in the ecosystem around our business that we create? We need to think about our employer responsibilities, because we might be employing people under the knowledge that in 2 or 3 year times, if we're successful in our automation program, that we need to make those people redundant. We also know that the work that we're giving them right now is going to change over the next few years. So how do we help them retrain? How do we help them continue to live fulfilling lives within our organization and prepare them for life outside? We also need to understand that the more technologies we have that allow us to monitor performance, that we look after their data and we look after their information in a responsible way. We need to then think about, so how does what we're learning through that process change what we think about job creation? So if we are going to make people redundant, is there a way we can help them create new businesses and create other jobs for other people? So it's kind of broadening the responsibility of us as entrepreneurs beyond our own endeavour, beyond our own organisation, and thinking about how that benefits society further into the future. That then leads us to think about, so if society is going to be a place where only 50% of the people are working, what do we need to do to ensure that people live fulfilling lives? How do we think about ideas like universal basic income and universal basic services? So maybe education for life is about teaching people around spirituality, teaching people about how to live fulfilling lives, teaching people about poetry, art, whatever it might be. Because unless we take the opportunity to ensure people live fulfilling lives, then actually we're on the brink of dystopia and societal breakdown. So it's kind of not a nice to do, it's actually an essential part of ensuring that humanity prevails. Just as much as ensuring that actually a human has the on-off switch to hand for artificial intelligence. Because what if those technologies create life forms or create systems that we can't understand? Then we lose control. So I think all of that is actually interconnected. How do we control the technologies and how do we ensure we live fulfilling lives? We also need to be aware that actually it's not just about the automation technologies that will change the work and business landscape. There are other technologies like atomically precise manufacturing, 3D printing, 4D printing, where materials can change their properties and self-heal, quantum computing, nanotechnology, brain-computer interface, robotics, drones, synthetic biology. So all these different technologies are coming together with AI to create new business sectors and new business opportunities in the future. And we need to make sure that the investment ecosystem is right to bring those to fruition as well. We need to understand that this change that's happening is really, really significant. And the big lesson for me here is that actually we don't resist change, but we do resist being changed. And that's one of the components that will grow when we start to think about the mental health challenge that we have. How do some of these changes set up the anxieties if we don't know how the future is going to play out, how my job is going to be secure or not, what kind of changes we might see in society, how I'm going to have to constantly retrain up to 6 times because I don't have one career per lifetime anymore. So we need to think really hard about how we invest in mental health. We also need to think about technology ethics, how we use technology in our businesses, but also how we lobby governments and regulators to think about how technology should be developed. Not just the weaponization of artificial intelligence, but how our lives are surveilled at the moment. Are we in a surveillance society, and how much more do we want that to progress? Do we want the store window that we're walking past to recognize me and create a display so I go in and buy exactly what's in the window because they know I've bought similar things before and they know my finance history? So we need to be really clear about what surveillance actually means. Do we want to use the social scoring system in China, whereby all of the systems are actually monitored in order that their behaviour will dictate the kind of social services that they can gain access to? So there are lots of questions wrapped up in this idea about the ethics of technology. And I think part of being in a very human future is drawing on the lessons of the past. What is it in the past that helps us retain our basic humanity going forward? And then how do we then continue a human dialogue to make sure that all of these issues are voiced, they're in the public domain so that we can make an informed decision about achieving a very human future. So hopefully that was interesting. And it was very different what I was going to talk about. But none of you are 11.